The timeless relationship between a boy and his dog is a story that's been told a million times before, but in my opinion, none of those dudes hold a candle to Jake the dog and Finn the human. Get ready to cry your butts off, because Distant Lands Together Again is exactly the heartbreakingly beautiful conclusion to Finn and Jake's story you wanted it to be. Today, we're going to be dissecting all the mathematical elements of these two best buds' final adventure. You're watching Whitney Vision, and this is my breakdown for Adventure Time Distant Lands Together Again. This is your spoiler warning! Do not proceed if you haven't watched Together Again on HBO Max. We're going to be talking about pretty much everything, so hit pause on this video and come back once you've tasted that 50 flavor ice cream. First off, I literally cried the entire time I was watching it, during my entire rewatch of it, and for basically 2 hours afterwards. If I make it through reading this without snotting all over the mic, it'll be a goddamn miracle. After watching Obsidian and seeing Finn's dope Jake chest tat, it was pretty clear that Together Again would feature the death of Jake the dog. And yet, although I definitely knew that Jake would die in this one, the story of their friendship still punched my heart right in the butt. Together Again opens up with Finn and Jake on an adventure just like always, but within a few moments of watching the episode, it's clear that something isn't normal. I mean, obviously they're racing through a tunnel trying to steal a pint of 50 flavor ice cream from a race of ice cream people, but that's still normal for Adventure Time. What's off is that their adventure seems disjointed and off-kilter, like several memories of memories smushed together to form what looks like a typical outing for Finn and Jake. In reality, it's not an adventure at all, but rather the effects of Finn's mind hole being sucked on by a parasite in the afterlife. During this Franken memory, there are several cameos. We see Finn and Jake fight 3 snow golems on their way to thwart the Ice King that look familiar. The first was a regular snow golem that first appeared in the pilot episode of Adventure Time, and would go on to be in several adventures, including the one where he adopted a sweet fire pup. The second golem took on the appearance of Peppermint Butler's arch-nemesis, Peacemaster, a warrior with an axe to grind against dark magic. The third golem took on the shape of Gumbald, Princess Bubblegum's created uncle figure, the primary antagonist of AT's final series, and the true identity of Punch Bowl. At the Ice King's castle, the snail that's in every episode of Adventure Time appears, crawling up the side of the makeshift death scales, dangling LSP and Turtle Princess precariously over a boiling cauldron. When Finn and Jake later see a bird's nest filled with the remains of their friends, the bones we see picked dry by carnivorous baby birds belong to Dirt Beer Guy, Abracadaniel, Meow, Lemon Grab, Mr. Pig, and like Where's Waldo, there's that snail again. If you don't remember, Dirt Beer Guy was once Root Beer Guy, but he sacrificed himself to protect the Candy Kingdom in Season 6. In Season 7, his wife Cherry Cream Soda accidentally resurrects him as the zombified Dirt Beer Guy. You might recall Abracadaniel as one of the inhabitants of Wizard City, who would go on to befriend the Ice King. Meow was the tiny assassin that tried to kill Wildberry Princess in Season 3, and is actually based off of a piece of fan art creator Penn Ward received from a young child. Mr. Pig, who we also see later in the episode, is Tree Trunks' longest-lasting and primary husband. Finally, Lemon Grab should need no introduction, but is best known as the leader of the Lemon People and a connoisseur of screechy catchphrases.
1,000,000 years, dungeon!
This amalgam of highlights firing off in Finn's brain is akin to the life flashing before your eyes effect that's reported to accompany near-death experiences IRL. But the question is, how accurate are these hallucinations? Obviously, there's lots of memories bleeding together to form this Franken memory, but is there any hidden truth to them? One wild fan theory I saw was that Jake and Finn happening upon the bones-filled nest was a real memory after the events of Come Along With Me. I know this show can get dark, but these skeletons are more likely Finn's subconscious telling him that he's grappling with death, as we see him pass by 2 other skeletons earlier in the episode. Still, that's a bonkers theory to think about. That being said, I do think that these hallucinations were based on actual memories, and that Finn's mind warped them when the parasite was sucking his strongest memories to the forefront of his thoughts. From there, his brain hole connected pieces of the memories to extrapolate metaphoric lessons from each of them. So, when he remembers worrying about the 50 flavor ice cream melting before he and Jake can get home to eat it together, that was actually Finn remembering what it was like to lose Jake. The worst thing in the universe is that dogs don't live as long as humans. And although Jake had extra longevity due to his shapeshifter DNA, he still would have passed away long before Finn. And likely, Finn had to watch his best buddy get older, weaker, and less able to participate in their adventures. When the Ice King zaps Jake and traps his body in a cube of ice, Finn had to pull him and carry him throughout the rest of their adventure. It was probably heartbreaking for Finn to carry on adventuring while Jake was drifting towards eternity. And whether he went out in an epic battle, or quietly surrounded by Lady and all of his weirdly shaped half-rainicorn kids, or became the filling to Earth's giant crater, like the comic by writer Steve Wolfhard depicts, one thing's for sure, there's no way that Finn was ready to let him go. When Finn and Jake fought the worms attacking the library and subsequently had to try and save the mother worm from being eaten by those birds, I believe that this was Finn remembering the events of the episode Food Chain, when Magic Man bewitched them to experience the circle of life firsthand. Jake's ambivalence towards seeing their friends' skeletons in the middle of their repeat of their experience as caterpillars who turned into birds and ate other caterpillars was a metaphor for how Jake tried to help Finn accept his eventual passing. As soon as Jake melts into his own grave, Finn starts crying and pleading for it not to be Jake's time to go. At one point, he screams, "This can't be happening, not now, not again," which is when we knew for sure that Jake had already died and that this was a memory. He also starts having flashes of himself as an old man, and when he pulls the parasite off his back, he also realizes that it must have been a recollection from long ago. With him in a dark dungeon are a hodgepodge of familiar faces from throughout the series. He's there with Donnie the obnoxious ogre, a house person, the cobbler, Charlie, and one of the old ladies from season 1. If you don't remember who some of these guys are, don't worry, I had to refresh my memory as well. Donnie was a grass ogre who appeared in the season 1 episode Donnie. His main move is to terrorize a community of house people, who Finn and Jake attempt to rescue by turning Donnie into a more empathetic, chilled-out person. Unfortunately, it turns out that Donnie's jerk attitude produced a substance called obnoxygen, which is lethal to local Y-wolves. Without the obnoxygen to deter them, the wolves started attacking and eating the house people. Finn and Jake bully Donnie into being a jerk again, and balance is restored. So that's where that house person and Donnie are from. The cobbler was the guy being chased by a dragon in the season 1 episode His Hero. Having just taken a pledge to become non-violent heroes, they tell him that they can only help him if he has a peaceful problem to solve. Although they try to help the cobbler, they just end up causing him more harm than they would have if they had just saved him from the dragon. Charlie is a duck from the episode Ocarina, where Kim Kil-won takes over the lease to the treehouse and begins renting it out to randoms. He's one of the roommates that signs with KKW and moves into Finn and Jake's space. The old woman is from the season 1 episode The Enchiridion. On their quest to find the ultimate hero's tome, Finn and Jake rescue a trio of gnomes from a lava pit. But as soon as the gnomes are free, they start cutting loose and destroying old ladies. This gal was one of the old women the gnomes destroyed, but it turns out that she and her death were only an illusion. That means that this super old lady really existed out there, and that she lived to be as old as Finn. I want to know what her story is, because she must not be fully human if she was an old lady when Finn was a kid and didn't kick the bucket for another 100 years or so after that. Shortly after Finn vows to rescue all of them from the cave and its parasites, the group is greeted by the Gate Guardian, a gigantic skeletal cyclops bird. He's the main guy in charge of welcoming the freshly deceased to eternity, and the last time we saw him was in the season 2 episode Death in Bloom, when Finn and Jake travel to the land of the dead to retrieve the soul of Princess Bubblegum's princess plant. He and Jake sneak past him pretty easily, just like Finn does in this scene. Also, if you look in the corner there, you'll see one of the soft people from the season 1 episode Gut Grinder. If you recall, Finn and Jake save a village of soft people from a gold-stealing monster who turns out to be Spiky Mayer's wife, Sharon, in disguise. When Finn finally realizes that he's dead, the first thing he does is freak out about getting to see Jake again. Once again, this is where I resumed sobbing, because that's exactly how I know I'll act the second I realize I'm dead and that I get to scoop Ghost Pugsley again. But instead of being greeted by his beloved best friend, it turns out that Mr. Fox is his assigned guide through the dead worlds, and all he wants in this afterlife time is a hypoallergenic pillow. In case you don't remember, Mr. Fox first appeared in the season 2 episode Storytelling, where Finn wanders through the forest trying to force an epic story to happen so that he can return home and tell it to a sick Jake. He makes Mr. Fox kiss Booba Fina, who he secretly has a crush on, but their forced kiss ends up ruining his chances with her. He pops up a few more times in the series, and at the end of Come Along With Me, his skull can be seen in King Bemo's castle. Mr. Fox explains that now that he's dead, he can assume any version of himself that he wants, and Finn morphs into each of his past reincarnations: Shoko, Pink Goop, a blue butterfly, and the blue catalyst comet. Finn also cycles through his younger selves, which is a nice quick nod to his buff baby days. Finn settles on a nice recognizable look, which at first seems like just a fourth wall joke, but is also because he wants Jake to be able to find him more easily. This means that Jake must have died while Finn was still in his teenage years or early 20s, because that would have been the last version of him he saw before he bit the dust. Mr. Fox goes on to explain that there are multiple dead worlds in the land of the dead, and that Jake isn't in this one. Only undertakers travel between the dead worlds with a special harmonic device and direct approval from the boss, aka New Death. But lol, when have rules ever stopped Finn before? Mr. Fox then hands Finn his assigned ticket to Dead World 37. Remember the season 4 episode Sons of Mars, where Magic Man swaps bodies bodies with Jake and Grob Gob Glodgrod sends him to Mars to be killed by Abraham Lincoln. When Jake dies, Lincoln vows to retrieve him from the 37th Dead World. TBH, this dead world is kinda depressing. It's gray, foggy, and sparsely peppered with tall winged skeletons. I feel like Finn would get bored in there fast, so it's a good thing he blows off that bean show. While attempting to bust down the doors to New Death's castle, he's surprised by none other than Tiffany, who has become the equivalent of a dead world cop in the afterlife. In his shock, Finn's face splits into 4 different faces. If you follow the King of Ooh Tumblr, one of the creators posted a behind-the-scenes drawing of several concepts, some of which made it into the episode and some that didn't. The 4 faces they initially wanted to explore were your best self, your worst self, your perceived self, and your unrealized self. In the actual episode, it looks like they ended up going with anger, fear, shock, and happiness. It also looks like they considered 2 other concepts where the characters have to carry all of their past incarnations on their backs or stacked on top of their heads. Anyways, quick reminder, Tiffany was the dude Jake used to make Finn jealous when Finn started hanging out with Lady Rainicorn a lot in season 1. Tiffany has always been obsessed with Jake and has both respect and disdain for Finn as Jake's best friend. As an Undertaker, he's able to let Finn and Mr. Fox into the castle, where he explains to Finn that Jake is in the highest possible realm of the Dead Worlds, the 50th, as predicted by that pint of ice cream. If you think about it, ice cream really is the definition of nirvana. New Death's castle is already a lot different than Death's. For starters, it's a bleak gray building full of sharp stalactites and spears, quite the contrast from the light castle that Finn and Jake saw when they visited Death for the first time back in season 2. In the entryway is a twisted tree with yellow hanging bulbs that Tiffany orders Finn not to touch, but that's about the only sign of life among the weird dude vibes. New Death's entry guard is a mid-2000s gamer stereotype with nothing but amps and controllers and energy drinks to his name. And the throne room is not much different. Although he and his dad clearly have the same taste in death metal, his throne room is more like a teenage boy's bedroom, complete with a bunch of empty cans, shitty posters, and laundry that needs to be put away. When they enter, New Death appears to be thanking the black glove on his right hand as he practices fight moves with a scythe. And homeboy has a temper. He could not be more opposite from his dad, who, although a death metal fan, was still a pretty laid-back dude. Finn tries to tell him that he was friends with Old Death and begs him to let him go to the 50th Dead World, but New Death refuses, telling him instead that he plans to shake things up in the Land of the Dead by getting rid of the Dead Worlds, butt-dropping souls, and breaking the wheel of reincarnation. He kicks Finn and Tiffany out of the throne room, but Finn steals Tiffany's harmonica and sets off to find Jake. He passes through several Dead Worlds on his journey, including Dead World 30, occupied by Tree Trunks and her many husbands, Mr. Pig, Randy, Danny, the Grey Alien, and President Porpoise. President P wasn't married to Tree Trunks in the OG series, so this must be a new development. Next, he lands in the audio afterlife, where sounds go when they die. According to the King of Ooh Tumblr, the geography there constantly shifts like sound waves. After that, he arrives at the Temple of Consumption, featuring a series of creatures eating one another for eternity. King of Ooh says that they played around with the idea that each of these animals potentially killed one another in their other lives. Next up, we have what King of Ooh describes as condos of the dead, a dead world that appears to be full of bird-shaped apartment buildings. Above the condos, the sky is filled with giant mold clouds where the dead in this world join a collective consciousness. King of Ooh also says that the hanging mold spores shed bits of personality that get passed on to the living. Finally, Finn ends up in Dead World 1. Although most of the Dead Worlds draw inspirations from various Eastern religions, Dead World 1 is most akin to the Ninth Circle of Hell from Dante's Inferno, where traitors who commit treachery against someone with whom they had a special relationship drown for eternity in a lake of icy water. AKA, the Ninth Circle is basically the lyrics to the second track on Olivia Rodrigo's album, Sour. When he first enters, we see the Grass Demon, Ricardio the Heart Guy, a Y-Wolf, and several other traitors embedded into the stone walls of the Dead World. Below in the Mud River, Largatha, Choose Goose, Maja, the Bath Boy Gang, Wyatt, the Goblin King, and the Gnome Ruler are all trapped in a liquid gray sludge. Presumably, Choose Goose is suffering for his heinous rhyming, but it's also possible that his illegal sales of moisturizer sentenced him to this fate. When alive, Slime Princess's younger sister Blargatha once plotted a power play to take over the throne of the Slime Kingdom, which was the first step in her plans of a militaristic takeover of Ooh. Maja the Sky Witch is not only guilty of holding Marceline's stuffed animal Hambo hostage, but also awakening Darren the Ancient Sleeper to take over the Candy Kingdom. The Bath Boy Gang were a group of thugs during Shoko's lifetime and wished to steal a gem from a young Princess Bubblegum. The Goblin King only made a brief appearance where he challenged Jake to a spitting contest, so it's unclear why he's in Dead World 1. The Gnome Ruler, however, once attempted to invert Ooh with Doofenshmirtz's levels of engineering so that gnomes could become the dominant species on the planet. Lastly, there's Wyatt, who's a total bean show and clearly Tree Trunks' worst ex. Not only did he steal her pies, but he also made out with her mother on her wedding day. And okay, maybe some of those guys aren't as bad as Olivia Rodrigo's ex, but a couple of them for sure are. Finn eventually zaps himself to the 45th Dead World, where his parents Joshua and Margaret and his brother Jermaine are living together. Margaret gives him a stack of handwritten notes in case he needs them in battle later, and for the first time in years, Finn gets to hug his family. Although he's so excited to see his mom and dad again, he's discouraged to find that they don't know how to get to the 50th Dead World. Frustrated, he goes outside to think about his next move, not realizing that New Death's undertakers are lurking nearby. Although they blow up his adoptive family's home, Tiffany secretly rescues them, unbeknownst to Finn. Convinced that his parents and Jermaine are gone and that he'll never get to the 50th Dead World to reunite with Jake, Finn breaks down. But over in the 50th, Jake picks up on Finn's intense vibes and decides to check it out. Finn is absolutely elated to see Jake again, but his happiness quickly turns to disappointment when he discovers that Jake no longer remembers him. After ascending through all the lesser Dead Worlds and becoming part of the 50th, Jake has reached the highest state of being and can no longer recall trivial details from his past life. In several Eastern religions, nirvana is the ultimate end state of pure happiness and self-liberation for a reincarnated soul. Jake hasn't merely forgotten Finn, he has emptied himself of all ego and graduated from reincarnation. His soul isn't looking to be reunited with Finn's or anyone else's, and he has no cosmic, personal, or other need to respawn. Basically, he's reached a state of ultimate fulfillment and enlightenment. Once again, I was sobbing hysterically because I was like, what if Pugsley doesn't wait for me in the Dead Worlds when he dies? What if his pure little puggy soul transcends to a higher level than I can ever hope to be on and I never see him again? But that's when Brett reminded me that Pugsley would never make it to Nirvana. He'd be trapped somewhere near Dead World 24 eating unlimited snacks at the food court. And that's actually kind of how Finn gets Jake back. He makes sure that he dies with Jake's favorite stick of gum in his pocket, and he feeds it to him in order to jog his memory. While it does loosen up some of the wheels in there, Jake still doesn't fully remember Finn until his buddy's life is in danger. When New Death and his undertakers show up to donk Finn's soul into oblivion, Jake develops a new purpose, and therefore his ego, and springs into action to save his best pal. With a fist bump and a call for adventure time, Finn and Jake are finally together again, fighting off evil dudes. With the 50th Dead World now open through the hole Jake came through, New Death arrives and tells them that this was his plan all along. As hard as he's tried, he hasn't been able to make it to 50, so he seizes the opportunity to pass through the opening. But pretty much the second he gets there, New Death realizes that he hardcore schemed his way into a hippie choir. The 50th is essentially a state of being where the souls within have reached eternal peace. Among them are Ghost/Warrior Princess, her soulmate Clarence, a Marshmallow Kid, and the banana guard that served as a conduit for the alien entity Bushi.
There's a 50-50 chance that Bushi will speak through me during this meeting. Oh my gosh, it's happening.
It's Bushi. Hello!
We also know that Chocoberry was probably up there, although we don't see her in the actual Dead World itself because she appears blissed out as heck next to the others when they fall through to Dead World 1. Clearly, New Death wasn't picturing a glowing field of gold with a bunch of guys in robes just standing around singing. He must have thought his dad was hiding some super epic tangible place from him, but in reality, New Death would have to do quite a bit of therapizing on himself in order to even want to access it. And then he would have to let go of that want because of ego death or whatever. And none of the above really sound like New Death's jam. New Death storms off to expedite his plan to kill all the souls in the afterlife, and Finn and Jake pay a visit to Peppermint Butler Ouija board style. Interestingly, Pep Bud is wearing Princess Bubblegum's crown, and there's a glittery pink life-size statue replica of Peebles. This could mean a couple of things. Either Princess Bubblegum is dead at this point in the timeline and this statue is an homage to her memory, she's actually frozen inside the statue and Peppermint Butler is acting as princess in interim, or Bubblegum retired and left the crown to her most trusted advisor. Maybe this is something we'll find out in the Peppermint Butler episode Wizard City. Peppermint Butler sends Finn and Jake to visit the goddess Life, Death's wife and the mother of New Death. Although Life never appeared in any of the full episodes of AT, she made her first appearance in the short The Gift That Keeps Reaping, and went on to show up in a few other shorts after that. Life lives within the underwater gardens, a primordial soup full of ancient fish and an active volcano that burps up souls that are ready to be reborn. It turns out that some people really are soulmates, and that although many souls are reborn solo time and again, a special few come through together in each lifetime. At first, when she hears that New Death is being a cheese toot, Life doesn't want to get involved in her son's business, but as soon as she discovers that he's halted the process of reincarnation, her only purpose, Life crafts a weapon to help the boys kill New Death. The weapon she makes for them is called the Kiss of Life. This bad boy is actually based on the rod of Asclepius from Greek mythology. Asclepius was the first healer, patron of doctors, and the mighty god of medicine. He was destroyed by Zeus after discovering the cure for death itself. Likewise, the Kiss of Life allows the user to conquer death, but unfortunately, slaying death comes with a terrible price. The killer must then become Death, taking his place and assuming all of his responsibilities. Finn and Jake freeze Death with one of the special notes that their mom gave Finn when he first stopped by their place. These notes are called Ofuda, and they are talisman in both Shinto and Buddhism that are imbued with the powers of the deities within. This Hold Still note was clearly full of love and patience from Margaret, and New Death freezes in place. He then tells them the real story of how he usurped his father. One day, while arguing with Death about how pointless Zen gardening is, New Death's father surprised him by embracing him. This enrages New Death, and the Lich's voice appears in his head, encouraging him to strike his father. When he bites down, Death dies and transforms into that twisted old tree with glowing yellow balls from the entrance of New Death's castle. New Death's right hand starts freaking out, and his eyes begin to glow green. The Lich has been controlling him all this time, and with New Death as his vessel, he's finally able to carry out his mission to destroy all life in the universe, including the lives in the afterlife. Without any souls in the dead world to reincarnate, the circle of life will halt, and life will cease to exist entirely. The universe will be dark, and the Lich will have finally succeeded. When Finn removes New Death's black glove, it turns out that the Lich's hand has been attached to his body. Technically, this is the hand of the alternate reality Lich from the Farm World episode. When Finn traveled through the multiverse, he severed the hand, but it was able to clone itself across each reality. In Whispers, Sweet Pea, the repaired incarnation of the Lich from the primary timeline, was able to prove that he was a good boy by slaying the evil hand, apparently sending it to the dead worlds. In New Death's memory of killing his dad, you can see the Lich's hand watching over him in the top corner over there. My guess is that after he killed his father, the hand approached him and offered to make him even more powerful than his old man. As the child of life and death, New Death is the ultimate purposeless being, which is why the Lich was drawn to him. While Finn and Jake are fighting over who will sacrifice themselves to kill New Death and assume all of his responsibilities, they shapeshift into a couple of their past lives. Finn transforms into Shoko and Lumpy Space Finn during their fight, and Jake changes into Shoko's tiger and his Warren Ampersand Jake hybrid form. But during their battle, Mr. Fox decides to intervene, thinking that they're fighting over a stick. Of course, he doesn't realize that the stick is actually the Kiss of Life, so when the Lich makes a mad dash towards the trio to permanently erase them from existence, Mr. Fox aims the staff towards him. The staff activates, and the clay snake comes to life, shooting at the Lich and biting his vessel's arm. Before exploding, New Death recognizes his mother's kiss. The snake settles itself into an Ouroboros position with its tail in its mouth and turns back to clay. Because Mr. Fox definitely didn't know what he was getting into when he aimed that stick at New Death, he's in for a bit of a nasty shock when his exterior meat suit falls off, leaving him an exposed skeleton wrapped in Death's bathrobe and hat. But the Lich still isn't dead yet. As the hand is trying to pitch itself to the New Death, Jake stomps on it and flings it into the dark abyss. Finally, the Lich is completely wiped from the universe, just like he wanted to do to everybody else. Thanos got Thanos, bitch! Thankfully, Mr. Fox seems pretty chill about the whole becoming death deal, because it means that he finally gets to make himself a hypoallergenic pillow! His new policy is to greet every soul entering the afterlife with one of their own, and God, I hope that this is a real thing that happens when you die. All of the souls are returned to their intended dead worlds, and Wyatt is revealed to still be trapped alone in Dead World 1 because he sucks so hard. Also, it turns out that Joshua and Margaret have adopted Tiffany, and plan to raise him in a loving home with plenty of attention, just like they did with their other 3 boys. When Mr. Fox offers to help Finn finally settle into the 37th Dead World, Finn has changed his mind. He realizes through hanging out with Jake again that, yes, being bros with this stretchy, farty yellow dog was the best part of his life, but that he ended up making it the only thing in his life. Looking back, he can see that after Jake died, a part of him died too, and he stopped living in maximum adventure mode from then on out. Sure, he was a hero till the day he died and beyond, but it was like the sun turned off for Finn after Jake left him for good. He decides that this time, he wants to live his life to the absolute fullest, and that if he has to do it without Jake, that's okay. He bids Jake and Mr. Fox goodbye and starts heading back to life's supervolcano to be reborn. It only takes Jake about 2 seconds after Finn leaves to realize that he doesn't want to go back to the 50th Dead World. As blissful as it was to spend eternity in emptiness and enlightenment, Jake truly believes that his purpose is to be alive with Finn. He jumps into the void after him, catching up to him just in time to grab his hand and greet the goddess life together. And even though Finn just had this amazing heartfelt epiphany, Jake easily convinces him that they're in this together for the rest of existence. And who's to say that this is the first time that this has happened? I mean, it's probably the first time that Jake ascended to Nirvana and they had to fight the Lich together, but maybe Finn and Jake have always been soulmates, even from the beginning of time and beyond. Even in other dimensions and timelines, Finn and Jake have always been together, as Shoko and her tiger, as Farm World Finn and Farm World Jake, and even as a memory in Finn's Pahoy lifetime. What if they've made this choice to remain together over and over, no matter what life or the afterlife threw at them? What if Finn and Jake's souls have always separated, faced the heartbreak and recovery of that loss, and still fought to find each other against all odds in every lifetime and dimension? I like to believe that this is the true meaning of the lyrics to Time Adventure, the song that Bimo and the rest of the gang sing together in order to banish Gulb. Jake and Finn will happen again and again, but they will always find a way to be together. Their love and loyalty for one another aligns with their cosmic destiny to form a lasting bond that supersedes all lifetimes, all dead worlds, and all adventures that might come their way. Finn and Jake are locked together for eternity, and even though the show is over and they aren't with us anymore, it's comforting to know that no matter where or when they are, they'll always have each other. Alright, if y'all didn't cry at least 12 million times during this episode, you're a goddamn monster and I hate you. I will probably never emotionally recover from this episode, and if you're anything like me, you probably won't either. But don't worry, we're in this together. I'm Scarlet Wit, and you're watching Whitney Van